They said I was harmless, fragile, forgettable, so I let them believe it, for decades, until the day I tore down a man's empire without ever raising my voice. My name is Arthur Penhaligon. I'm 78 years old. And this is not a story of violence or shouting. This is a story about the quiet kind of revenge, the kind that takes years, that uses silence like a scalpel, that destroys from the inside. For 50 years, I was a librarian, the man who shelved books, who smiled politely, who limped a little when the weather changed. But behind the quiet, there was a storm. And now the storm is about to break. My life wasn't always so tranquil, so predictable. Before the quiet life amongst the Dewey Decimals, there was, well, let's just say there were experiences that shaped me, forged me into the man I am today. Experiences that taught me the bitter taste of betrayal, the searing pain of injustice, and the chilling understanding of how easily one's life can be shattered. The quiet strength I cultivated wasn't born of inaction. It was the quiet strength born of enduring the unendurable, of bearing witness to cruelty, and of making a silent vow to ensure such things never happened again, at least not without consequence. My mind, however, remains as sharp as a tack. My memory, a vast and detailed library in itself, holds every detail, every nuance, every injustice. And now, at 78, with my carefully curated life seemingly at its end, I'm about to embark on a chapter I never anticipated, a final narrative that will bring to a close not only my story, but the stories of those who wronged me. This is the story of how I, Arthur Penhaligon, the unassuming librarian, finally served my revenge. It's a long story, but I promise you, it's worth the telling. It's a story about justice, about forgiveness, and about the unexpected lessons learned along the way. It's a story about the quiet power held by a seemingly frail old man, and it all starts here. My days were a gentle rhythm, a comforting melody played out in the quiet solitude of my small cottage. Sunrise found me already awake, the early light painting the walls a soft, warm gold. A simple breakfast of toast and marmalade, followed by a careful review of the day's newspaper, not for the headlines, mind you, but for the crossword puzzle, a daily mental exercise that kept my mind as sharp as a well-honed blade. After breakfast, a slow, deliberate walk through my small garden, tending to my roses, their vibrant colors a stark contrast to the muted tones of my life. The afternoons were dedicated to my books, of course, not the dusty tomes of St. Jude's Nausea, but my own personal collection, a carefully curated library of tales and histories, poetry and philosophy. I'd spend hours lost in the pages, surrounded by the comforting weight of knowledge, the silent company of authors long gone. Evenings were spent by the fire, a mug of steaming tea warming my hands, the crackling flames casting dancing shadows on the walls. Sometimes I'd listen to classical music, letting the soaring melodies fill the quiet spaces of my small home. Sometimes I would simply sit and reflect, my thoughts wandering through the labyrinth of my memories. It was a life of quiet contentment, a life deliberately chosen, a refuge from the chaos and complexities of the outside world. My solitude wasn't loneliness, it was a conscious decision, a deliberate retreat into the sanctuary of my own mind and spirit. I found peace in the simple routines, the predictable rhythm of my days. It was a life devoid of drama, of excitement, of much of anything at all, really, except, of course, for the carefully laid plans that simmered beneath the surface, the meticulous preparation for the carefully orchestrated events yet to unfold. My quiet life, my simple routine, was merely the stage upon which my carefully constructed revenge would play out, the calm before the storm, if you will. And the storm, my friends, was about to break. My great-niece, Clara, was turning 10, a milestone birthday, naturally warranting a family gathering. The house, usually quiet and serene, was transformed into a chaotic whirlwind of excited children, bustling adults, and the ever-present aroma of roast chicken and overcooked potatoes. Laughter, shrill and boisterous, echoed through the rooms, a stark contrast to the usual peaceful silence I cherished. It was a scene of familial harmony, or so it appeared on the surface. Beneath the veneer of forced merriment, a simmering tension hung heavy in the air, palpable as the scent of the celebratory cake. This gathering wasn't just a birthday party, it was a carefully orchestrated stage for my plan. The players were all in place, their roles meticulously assigned, their lines, though unspoken, perfectly rehearsed, and center stage, basking in the attention and adoration he so craved, stood Richard, my nephew. Richard, the man who had years ago orchestrated the events that led to my quiet life, my self-imposed exile from the world. Richard, the man whose arrogance and greed had caused me such immeasurable pain. Richard, with his slicked-back hair and self-satisfied smirk, was the epitome of everything I despised. His success, built on the foundations of my misfortune, was a constant, irritating reminder of the injustice I had endured. He moved through the party with the swagger of a conquering hero, oblivious to the simmering resentment that burned within me. He spoke loudly, laughed heartily, and regaled everyone with tales of his own accomplishments, his voice a grating counterpoint to the children's joyous shrieks. He was the embodiment of everything I had sworn to overcome, the embodiment of the very injustice I was about to rectify. And tonight, my friends, the curtain was about to rise on the final act. The meticulously planned climax of a decades-long drama, the carefully crafted revenge I had been patiently waiting for. The champagne flowed freely, the laughter grew louder, and Richard, emboldened by the alcohol and the adulation, began to weave his way through the throng of family members, his voice booming above the general din. He stopped by my side, his eyes condescending, his smirk widening. He clapped me on the shoulder, a gesture more forceful than affectionate. "Uncle Arthur," he boomed, his voice carrying across the room, "still clinging to life. I see." A ripple of uncomfortable silence followed, the laughter abruptly ceasing. His words hung in the air, heavy with disdain. He continued, his voice dripping with sarcasm, "You know, for a man your age, you're remarkably persistent. Though I suppose it's hardly surprising. You've always been rather clingy, haven't you?" A cruel laugh escaped his lips, a sound that grated on my nerves like nails on a chalkboard. He leaned in closer, his breath hot on my ear, his voice a venomous whisper. "Honestly, Uncle Arthur," he hissed, "you're nothing but dead weight, a drain on everyone's resources. Time you faded into the woodwork, wouldn't you say?" The words struck me like a physical blow. For a moment, a flicker of hurt, a raw, visceral pain, pierced the carefully constructed wall of composure I had built around myself over the years. My hand trembled slightly as I reached for my cane, my knuckles white as I gripped the smooth wood. The suppressed anger, simmering beneath the surface for decades, threatened to erupt like a volcano. But I remained outwardly calm, my face betraying nothing of the tempest raging within. My eyes, however, hardened, their gaze unwavering and cold, meeting his with an intensity that surprised even me. This, I realized, was the moment I had been waiting for. The spark that would ignite the carefully laid fuse, the precise trigger for my meticulously planned revenge. The insult had been delivered, and the response, I promised myself, would be swift and decisive. "Dead weight," he called me. "Dead weight." The words echoed in my ears, a cruel symphony of past injustices, years of suppressed resentment, carefully bottled and stored away in the deepest recesses of my heart, now surged to the surface, a tidal wave of anger threatening to consume me. How dare he? How dare he speak to me, to anyone, with such callous disregard? His words weren't just an insult, they were a reminder, a brutal reminder of everything he had taken from me. My mind raced, replaying the events of those long-ago days, the betrayal, the theft, the cold indifference that had shattered my life. I saw myself, younger, stronger, full of hope and ambition, brought low by his greed, his treachery. And now here I was, an old man, reduced to a mere inconvenience in his eyes, a shadow in the periphery of his opulent life. He had stolen my inheritance, my reputation, my peace of mind. He thought he had won, thought he had silenced me. But he was wrong. Oh, so very wrong. The hurt was there, a sharp, stinging pain, but it was quickly overshadowed by a cold and hard fury. This wasn't just about the money, or the reputation, or even the years of quiet suffering. This was about justice. This was about making him understand the consequences of his actions. This was about the satisfaction of seeing his smug facade crumble, his arrogance shattered. This was about the quiet triumph of a long-awaited revenge. He had underestimated me, dismissed me as inconsequential. He thought I was weak. He thought I was finished. He thought he had won, but tonight the game would change. Tonight, the tables would turn. Tonight, he would learn the true meaning of dead weight. My initial reaction was a stunned silence. The words hung in the air, heavy with their unspoken implications, a cruel testament to his arrogance and my own long-suffering patience. The hurt, sharp and immediate, was quickly swallowed by a rising tide of cold, calculating anger. It wasn't a sudden explosion of rage, but a slow, steady burn, a smoldering ember that ignited a fire in my soul. This wasn't about immediate retribution. This was about meticulous planning, about crafting a response that would be as precise and devastating as a surgeon's scalpel. Years ago, I had begun to lay the groundwork for this moment. The seed of revenge had been planted long ago, nurtured and cultivated with unwavering dedication. Each seemingly insignificant act, each quiet observation, each carefully collected piece of information had been a step towards this ultimate goal. My quiet life, my solitary existence, wasn't a sign of weakness. It was a strategic retreat, a calculated move to gather my strength, to sharpen my focus, to prepare for this moment of reckoning. The insult, though painful, had served as the catalyst, the precise spark that ignited the carefully laid fuse. It was the final piece of the puzzle, the missing element that set the intricate mechanism of my plan into motion. Now the gears began to turn, each cog meshing perfectly, each component working in harmony towards a singular, devastating purpose. My years of meticulous preparation, my quiet observation, my patient waiting, were all culminating in this moment. The seed of revenge had blossomed into a full-blown plan, intricate and deadly, as precise as a well-aimed arrow, and the target, my dear friends, was firmly in my sights. Richard. The name itself was a bitter pill to swallow. But understanding him, truly understanding his weaknesses, was crucial to my plan. He was, after all, the architect of my misfortune, the orchestrator of my downfall. Over the years, I had studied him, observed him, catalogued his every flaw, every vanity, every insecurity. He was a man consumed by his own image, a puppet dancing to the tune of public perception. His arrogance was legendary, a thick, impenetrable shield masking a deep-seated insecurity. He craved admiration, adoration, the validation of his peers. His success, his wealth, his position in society. These weren't ends in themselves. They were mere props in a grand performance designed to bolster his fragile ego. His obsession with status, with maintaining a flawless public image, was his Achilles' heel. It was the chink in his armor, the vulnerability I would exploit. He lived for the applause, for the accolades, for the affirmation of his superiority. And that, my friends, was the key. My plan wouldn't involve brute force or overt confrontation. It would be a subtle, insidious undermining of his carefully constructed persona, a slow, agonizing erosion of his carefully crafted reputation. It would be a silent symphony of destruction played out on the stage of his own vanity. He would be the conductor of his own downfall, unaware of the precise tempo and rhythm of his impending demise. He would play the role perfectly, and I would ensure that the audience had the best seats in the house. My plan began to take shape, a slow, deliberate process of strategic thinking. I was an old man, my body frail, my strength diminished, but my mind, that was sharp as ever, a finely honed instrument capable of crafting a plan as intricate and deadly as any weapon. I wouldn't rely on physical prowess. My strength lay in my intellect, my knowledge, my understanding of Richard's character. He was a man of vanity, of public image, and that was where I would strike. My years spent as a librarian, surrounded by books and information, had been more than just a profession. It was a training ground, a sharpening of my intellect. The meticulous organization of my work had instilled in me a capacity for detail, a precision in my thinking that would be invaluable in orchestrating my revenge. I began to assemble my arsenal, not weapons of violence, but weapons of information, carefully chosen facts, subtly placed rumors, and cleverly crafted narratives. Each piece was meticulously selected, each move calculated to maximize its impact, each step designed to chip away at Richard's carefully constructed facade. I knew I had to be patient, methodical, allowing the plan to unfold at its own pace, to let the seeds of doubt and suspicion germinate and grow in the fertile soil of Richard's insecurities. My physical limitations would not hinder me. Instead, they would become my advantage. My age, my perceived frailty, would be my camouflage, allowing me to move unseen, unheard, while I orchestrated the downfall of my nemesis. The game was afoot, and I, the old librarian, was ready to play. My next step was the meticulous gathering of intelligence. Richard, for all his arrogance, was surprisingly transparent. His life was an open book, albeit one written in the flamboyant script of self-aggrandizement. His business dealings, his social circles, his vulnerabilities, all were readily available to those who knew where to look. And I, my friends, knew exactly where to look. My years as a librarian had taught me the value of information, the power of knowledge. I was a master of research, a connoisseur of detail. So I delved into public records, corporate filings, social media posts, a digital archaeologist unearthing the hidden skeletons in Richard's closet. I meticulously pieced together the fragments of his life, constructing a complete picture of his strengths and, more importantly, his weaknesses. I learned about his questionable business practices, his shady dealings, his strained relationships, his hidden debts. Each piece of information was a weapon, a potential tool in my arsenal of revenge. I discovered his penchant for extravagant spending, his reliance on borrowed money, his carefully cultivated image of success that masked a desperate need for validation. I observed his interactions with his associates, noting their subtle expressions of disdain, their calculated avoidance of his gaze. I listened to whispered conversations, gleaning insights into his character, his motivations, his insecurities. The information flowed to me like a river, and I, the patient fisherman, carefully collected my catch. The stage was set, and I had gathered all the props needed for my performance. The information I had gathered was a tapestry, woven with threads of Richard's arrogance, his vanity, his insatiable need for public approval. And from this tapestry, the perfect weapon emerged. Not of physical weapons, of course, but something far more potent, far more devastating. Something that would strike at the very core of his being. Something that would unravel his meticulously constructed image, leaving him exposed and vulnerable. It wasn't a single, dramatic act, but a carefully orchestrated campaign, a symphony of subtle actions, each note perfectly placed to create a crescendo of destruction. It involved the strategic release of information, the subtle manipulation of perception, the art of planting seeds of doubt in the minds of those around him. It was a slow, agonizing process, a drawn-out dismantling of his carefully constructed facade. I wouldn't shout from the rooftops. I would whisper in the ears of those who mattered most. The weapon I chose was as subtle as it was deadly. It was the insidious power of truth, selectively revealed, strategically placed, strategically timed to maximize its impact. It was the slow drip, drip, drip of uncomfortable facts, carefully chosen details, subtly suggestive insinuations, each carefully placed to erode Richard's reputation like relentless waves against a crumbling cliff face. He had built his empire on lies and deception, and I would use the truth to bring it crashing down. It wasn't about inflicting physical pain. It was about inflicting the far greater pain of public humiliation, the agonizing awareness of his shattered illusion. The weapon was ready. The time had come to unleash it. Phase 1 of my operation commenced with surgical precision. It wasn't a dramatic unveiling, but a series of subtle maneuvers, carefully orchestrated to create the perfect conditions for the main event. Think of it as setting the stage, arranging the props, ensuring the lighting was just right before the curtain rose. My first move was almost imperceptible. A carefully placed whisper in the right ear, a subtly suggestive comment dropped into the right conversation. I started by planting seeds of doubt, carefully chosen facts presented in a way that raised questions without providing answers. I wasn't accusing, I was merely suggesting, planting the seeds of suspicion in the minds of those closest to Richard. I focused on his business associates, the people whose opinions mattered most to him, the ones who craved the validation of his success as much as he did. I used my knowledge of their relationships with Richard, their shared ambitions, their personal vulnerabilities to carefully target my information, ensuring it landed with maximum impact. The initial response was muted, almost imperceptible. A flicker of doubt in someone's eyes, a hesitant pause in a conversation, a subtle shift in body language. These were the small victories, the incremental gains that would ultimately lead to Richard's downfall. Phase 1 wasn't about immediate results. It was about laying the groundwork, creating the fertile soil in which the seeds of my plan would germinate and grow. It was about subtly shifting the narrative, creating an atmosphere of uncertainty, an environment where doubts could fester and suspicions could bloom. The game was on, and the first act was playing out exactly as I had envisioned. Phase 2 was where the subtle shifts of Phase 1 began to manifest into tangible changes in Richard's life. The seeds of doubt I had planted were beginning to sprout, their tendrils slowly wrapping around his carefully constructed world. The whispers had become murmurs, the murmurs had become conversations, and the conversations were beginning to threaten his carefully cultivated image. I watched, unseen, as cracks appeared in his facade. Business deals began to fall through, partnerships dissolved, and opportunities evaporated. His once unwavering confidence wavered, replaced by a growing sense of unease, a gnawing suspicion that something was amiss. His carefully curated public persona, once so flawless, started to show signs of wear and tear. The shine had dulled, the veneer was cracking, and the carefully constructed image was beginning to crumble. His social circle, once so vibrant and adoring, began to thin. Invitations to exclusive events became fewer and further between. The once eager smiles of his associates were replaced by cautious glances and strained conversations. His attempts to regain control, to reassert his dominance, only served to amplify the growing sense of unease. He was becoming increasingly isolated, his world shrinking, his influence waning. The subtle undermining was working. His empire, built on sand, was beginning to sink into the quicksand of his own making. The wheels of fate, carefully oiled by my meticulous planning, were turning inexorably towards their intended destination. Phase 3 was the culmination, the grand finale of my carefully orchestrated revenge. It wasn't a dramatic confrontation, a shouting match, or a physical altercation. It was far more subtle, far more devastating. It was the unveiling, the revelation, the moment when the truth, carefully concealed and strategically revealed, finally came to light. I didn't expose Richard myself. I didn't need to. The groundwork had been laid, the seeds had been sown, and the harvest was ripe for the picking. A carefully placed document, a leaked email, a strategically timed phone call. The truth emerged not from me, but from the very fabric of Richard's own deceitful existence. His carefully constructed lies, his meticulously crafted image, crumbled before the weight of undeniable evidence. The impact was immediate and devastating. His carefully cultivated reputation shattered like a dropped mirror, the fragments reflecting a distorted image of his true self. His associates, once eager to bask in the reflected glory of his success, recoiled in horror and disgust. His carefully constructed world imploded, leaving him exposed, vulnerable and utterly alone. The silence that followed was deafening, the emptiness profound. He had built his life on lies, and those lies had finally caught up with him. The revelation was complete, and my revenge was served. Richard's reaction was a spectacle in itself, a masterclass in denial, anger, and ultimately pathetic defeat. At first, there was shock, a stunned silence that hung heavy in the air, broken only by the whispers and gasps of those around him. His carefully constructed facade, the mask he had worn for so long, cracked, revealing the raw, vulnerable face of a man exposed. Then came the anger, a furious outburst of denial and accusations, a desperate attempt to regain control, to salvage what remained of his reputation. He lashed out, blaming others, attempting to shift the blame, to deflect the responsibility for his actions. But his words rang hollow, devoid of conviction, their force weakened by the overwhelming weight of the truth. The anger eventually gave way to shame, a deep, burning humiliation that etched itself onto his face. His eyes, once so full of arrogance and self-importance, were now filled with a mixture of shock, embarrassment, and despair. The man who had once commanded attention with such effortless grace was now reduced to a pathetic figure, a broken shell of his former self. His carefully constructed world had imploded, leaving him exposed, vulnerable, and utterly alone. The humiliation was complete, a fitting punishment for a lifetime of deceit and manipulation. His carefully constructed reputation lay in ruins, a testament to the power of truth and the enduring nature of justice. The fallout was swift and brutal. Richard's family, once blinded by his charisma and success, now faced the harsh reality of his true nature. The whispers turned to accusations, the hushed conversations to open confrontations. Years of carefully constructed lies had unraveled, exposing the cracks in their carefully built family structure. The shame was palpable, a heavy blanket draped over their once proud lineage. His business associates, once eager for his favors, now distanced themselves, their relationships severed by the exposure of his deceit. Opportunities vanished, partnerships dissolved, and the weight of his actions bore down on everyone connected to him. The wider community, initially captivated by Richard's public image, reacted with a mixture of shock and disgust. The man they had once admired was now a figure of scorn and ridicule. His name, once synonymous with success and prestige, became a byword for dishonesty and betrayal. The newspapers were filled with articles detailing his misdeeds, his image tarnished beyond repair. His downfall served as a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the consequences of unchecked ambition and deceit. The ripple effect of my revenge spread far and wide, a testament to the power of truth and the enduring nature of justice. The aftermath was a stark landscape, devoid of the glamour and illusion Richard had so carefully cultivated. The experience proved to be a crucible, forging a transformation in Richard they hadn't anticipated. The initial shock and anger gradually gave way to a profound sense of remorse. He began to confront the depth of his own deceit, the pain he had inflicted on others, and the hollowness of his carefully constructed life. The weight of his actions pressed down on him, forcing a painful introspection. He saw the error of his ways, the destructive nature of his ambition, and the importance of humility and respect. The proud, arrogant man I had known was replaced by a humbled individual, stripped bare of his illusions and forced to confront his true self. He sought forgiveness from those he had wronged, not expecting absolution but offering genuine amends. He began to understand the value of genuine relationships, the importance of empathy, and the devastating consequences of his actions. The transformation wasn't immediate, nor was it easy. It was a gradual process, fraught with setbacks and moments of doubt. But the seeds of change had been sown, and they were beginning to sprout, taking root in the fertile ground of his remorse. He began to rebuild his life, not on the foundation of lies and deceit, but on the principles of honesty, integrity, and respect for others. The lesson was harsh, but ultimately, it was a lesson learned. My revenge wasn't about the thrill of victory, the satisfaction of inflicting pain. It was about restoring balance, about righting a wrong that had festered for far too long. The feeling wasn't one of gleeful triumph, but a quiet sense of satisfaction, a deep inner peace that settled over me like a gentle balm. It wasn't the destructive fire of anger, but the quiet warmth of vindication. The weight of years of resentment lifted, replaced by a sense of closure, a feeling of having finally brought justice to a situation that had long felt unjust. It wasn't a feeling of hatred or malice, but a profound sense of relief. The years of meticulous planning, the careful execution, the calculated moves, all of it culminated in a sense of quiet satisfaction, a feeling that justice had been served, not through violence or retribution, but through the power of truth and the weight of consequences. The quiet hum of satisfaction resonated within me, a low, steady thrum that vibrated through my being. It wasn't a triumphant roar, but a gentle sigh of relief, the release of a burden I had carried for far too long. It was a quiet internal victory, a subtle shift in the balance of power, a restoration of equilibrium. The feeling was profound, a quiet satisfaction born not of hatred, but of justice finally served. And in that quiet satisfaction, I found a peace I hadn't known in decades. Ironically, the unraveling of Richard's carefully constructed world led to an unexpected positive consequence. A strengthening of family bonds. Stripped of his manipulative influence, the family was forced to confront their own vulnerabilities and dependencies. The initial shock and shame gave way to a period of introspection and healing. They began to communicate more openly, honestly, and with greater empathy. The shared experience of Richard's downfall, though painful, forged a deeper connection between them. They learned to rely on each other for support and understanding, creating a stronger, more resilient family unit. The absence of Richard's domineering presence allowed other family members to step forward, to take on leadership roles, and to discover their own strengths. The family dynamic shifted, evolving from a hierarchical structure dominated by Richard into a more egalitarian and supportive environment. This newfound unity wasn't a direct result of my actions, but rather an unintended consequence, a silver lining in the dark cloud of Richard's downfall. It was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the capacity for growth even in the face of adversity. The family, stripped bare of illusion, began to rebuild, not on the foundation of lies and manipulation, but on the bedrock of truth, honesty, and mutual respect. It was a surprising, yet welcome, outcome. Our relationship, once defined by animosity and resentment, underwent a subtle shift. The bitter taste of revenge gradually gave way to a complex mix of emotions. Richard's remorse was genuine, his humility profound. He didn't seek absolution, but he did seek understanding. And in his quiet contrition I found a strange kind of respect. The man who had once reveled in cruelty and manipulation was now a shadow of his former self, humbled by the consequences of his actions. The anger that had fueled my revenge began to dissipate, replaced by a weary acceptance. There was no reconciliation, no sudden burst of forgiveness, but a quiet understanding. We were bound by a shared history, a history marked by pain and betrayal, but also by a shared experience of profound change. The animosity that had once dominated our interactions was replaced by a fragile truce, a hesitant acknowledgement of the shared human experience of flaws, mistakes, and the possibility of redemption. There was no friendship, no camaraderie, but a grudging respect, born from the ashes of our bitter conflict. It was an uneasy peace, a fragile understanding, but it was a change nonetheless, a testament to the unexpected complexities of human relationships. The weight of the past still lingered, but it no longer defined us. We were different men, changed by the events that had transpired. Looking back, the bitterness lingers, a persistent undercurrent to the quiet satisfaction. The pursuit of revenge, though ultimately successful, left a residue of unease. It was a protracted, emotionally draining process, consuming years of my life and leaving its mark on my soul. The meticulous planning, the constant vigilance, the calculated moves, all of it took a toll. Even in victory, there's a profound sense of loss, a recognition of the corrosive nature of resentment. Revenge, I've learned, is a double-edged sword. It can bring a sense of justice, a restoration of balance, but it also carries a heavy price. It consumes the avenger as much as the target. The unexpected consequences, the unforeseen ripple effects, these are the harsh realities of seeking retribution. The strengthened family bonds, Richard's remorse, the uneasy peace between us, these were not the outcomes I had envisioned, yet they are no less significant. My actions were not without their flaws, and the experience has left me with a profound understanding of the complexities of human nature and the limitations of revenge as a solution. The path to justice is rarely straightforward, and the pursuit of vengeance often leads to unintended consequences, both positive and negative. The journey, I realize now, was as much about self-discovery as it was about retribution. The question of justification hangs heavy in the air. Was my revenge morally sound? Was it the right course of action? These are questions I grapple with even now. While Richard's actions were undeniably reprehensible, my response was hardly without flaw. The meticulous planning, the subtle manipulations, the calculated destruction of his reputation. These were not actions born of righteousness, but of deep-seated anger and resentment. They were actions fueled by a desire for retribution, not reconciliation. The line between justice and revenge is often blurred, and in my case, the two became inextricably intertwined. While I achieved a sense of justice, the methods I employed were questionable. The collateral damage inflicted on his family, his associates, and the community at large cannot be ignored. My actions were far from perfect, a testament to the moral complexities inherent in seeking revenge. It was a necessary evil, perhaps, but an evil nonetheless. The satisfaction I felt was tainted by the knowledge that my methods were not without their ethical shortcomings. The question remains, was it justice or merely a different form of cruelty? The answer, I fear, is shrouded in the moral ambiguity of my actions. There is no easy answer, only the lingering weight of the choices I made. The most ironic twist, perhaps, is that in destroying Richard, I inadvertently strengthened the very family he had sought to manipulate and control. His downfall, while initially devastating, forced them to confront their own vulnerabilities and dependencies, ultimately forging a stronger bond between them. They learned to communicate more openly, to support each other, and to rely on their own strengths. The family, stripped of Richard's domineering presence, blossomed in a way I never could have anticipated. It was a bittersweet irony, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the unpredictable nature of consequences. My carefully orchestrated revenge, intended to inflict maximum damage, inadvertently resulted in a positive transformation within the family. The shared experience of hardship, the collective struggle to rebuild, brought them closer together than they had ever been before. It's a sobering thought that the very act designed to destroy could ultimately lead to such unexpected growth and unity. In a strange, paradoxical way, Richard's downfall became the catalyst for the family's healing and strengthening. The irony, of course, is that the intended victim of my revenge became the unintentional architect of his own family's unexpected resurgence. It's a lesson in unintended consequences, a reminder that even the most carefully laid plans can be swept away by the unpredictable currents of life. A strange peace settled over me, a quiet acceptance of the events that unfolded. The satisfaction wasn't the triumphant feeling I'd anticipated. It was more of a weary calm, a sense of closure. The years of planning, the simmering anger, the relentless pursuit of revenge, it all culminated in a resolution that felt both satisfying and incomplete. The bitterness remained, a shadow in the corners of my memory, but it no longer consumed me. I had achieved my goal, yet the victory felt hollow, tinged with the understanding that revenge, while providing a sense of justice, offers no true solace. The weight of the past, however, still rests upon my shoulders. The moral ambiguities, the unintended consequences, these are burdens I carry, but I carry them with a sense of acceptance, a recognition that life is a complex tapestry woven with threads of both good and evil. My actions were born from a place of pain and hurt, but they did not define me. The journey, though fraught with darkness, led me to a place of quiet understanding and acceptance. The pursuit of revenge, I've learned, is a journey of self-discovery as much as it is about retribution. It's a path that leads to unexpected destinations, revealing truths about ourselves and the world around us that we may never have encountered otherwise. And in that understanding, perhaps, lies a different kind of peace. A peace born not of victory, but of acceptance. My approach was the antithesis of Richard's brash, arrogant style. He operated in the full glare of the spotlight, his actions loud and ostentatious. I, on the other hand, preferred the shadows, the subtle manipulation of events, the quiet planting of seeds of doubt. Where he was blunt and aggressive, I was patient and calculating. My revenge was a slow burn, a carefully orchestrated symphony of subtle actions, each note played with precision and purpose. It was a testament to the power of intellect and strategy over brute force. Richard's downfall was not a result of a single, dramatic event, but a culmination of carefully orchestrated circumstances. His arrogance blinded him to the subtle shifts in perception, the whispers in the corridors of power, the gradual erosion of his carefully constructed image. He was a bull in a china shop, crashing through life with reckless abandon, oblivious to the fragility of his own carefully crafted facade. My approach, in contrast, was surgical, precise, and devastatingly effective. It highlighted the power of patience, the importance of planning, and the effectiveness of a quiet, calculated strategy. The contrast between our approaches underscores the often overlooked power of subtlety in achieving one's goals, a stark contrast to Richard's boisterous and ultimately self-destructive methods. It proved that sometimes the quietest actions can have the loudest consequences. My pursuit of revenge taught me the limitations of retribution. It brought a sense of justice, yes, but also a profound understanding of the complexities of human relationships and the corrosive nature of unchecked anger. The satisfaction was fleeting, overshadowed by the moral ambiguities of my actions and the unintended consequences they wrought. I learned that true justice isn't about inflicting pain, but about finding a path towards healing and understanding. It's a lesson I wish I'd learned sooner, but one I'm grateful to have learned nonetheless. Richard's journey was a crucible. His downfall forced a painful self-reflection, stripping away his arrogance and revealing a capacity for remorse and genuine amends. He learned the hard way the value of humility, the importance of respect, and the devastating consequences of unchecked ambition. His transformation, though born from hardship and humiliation, was remarkable. It demonstrated the resilience of the human spirit and the potential for growth, even in the face of overwhelming adversity. Both our journeys, though vastly different, converged on a shared understanding: the complexities of human interaction and the profound need for empathy, respect, and a willingness to acknowledge our own flaws. The path to true resolution lies not in revenge, but in understanding and acceptance. In the end, my revenge was a curious thing. It wasn't the glorious victory I'd envisioned, nor was it the complete annihilation of my enemy. It was something far more nuanced, far more complex. It was a testament to the unexpected ways in which justice can manifest, often in ways we least expect. Richard's downfall wasn't simply my doing. It was a confluence of his own actions, his own flaws, and the ripple effect of his choices. My actions served as a catalyst, but the ultimate responsibility for his ruin rested squarely on his shoulders. The true victory, I realized, wasn't in his defeat, but in the quiet satisfaction of knowing I had stood my ground, that I had defended my honor and dignity, even against an opponent far more powerful and influential. It was a victory not of brute force, but of quiet resilience, a victory of self-respect. Revenge, I've learned, is a double-edged sword, capable of inflicting deep wounds, but also capable of revealing profound truths about ourselves and the nature of justice. It's a path fraught with peril, leading to unexpected destinations, and often leaving behind a trail of unintended consequences. Ultimately, it is a reminder that true justice is not about retribution, but about self-respect, integrity, and the quiet dignity of living a life true to one's own values. And that, in the end, is a far more lasting impression than any act of revenge could ever be. It is a lesson I carry with me, a quiet wisdom born from a journey of conflict, resolution, and unexpected understanding. So there you have it. My story, my revenge. It's a tale of calculated actions, unexpected consequences, and a hard-won understanding of the complexities of human nature. Was it worth it? That's a question I still grapple with. The satisfaction was fleeting, a momentary balm to years of simmering resentment. But the lingering aftertaste is one of ambiguity, a blend of justice and regret. The path to revenge is a winding road, one that leads not only to the downfall of another, but also to a profound self-discovery. It's a journey that forces introspection, revealing hidden truths about ourselves and the world around us. My actions, though effective, were not without their moral grey areas. The collateral damage, the unintended consequences, these are burdens I carry. And yet, I find a strange sort of peace in the aftermath, a peace born not of triumphant victory but of acceptance of the choices I made, the consequences I faced, and the enduring complexities of human relationships. I leave you to ponder the implications, to consider the moral landscape of revenge, and to decide for yourselves what constitutes true justice. Is it the infliction of pain, the satisfaction of retribution, or something far more profound? Perhaps the greatest lesson learned isn't about the pursuit of revenge itself, but about the enduring power of self-respect, the quiet dignity of living a life guided by integrity, and the unexpected ways in which justice can ultimately prevail. The answer, I believe, lies within each of us.